Among the pack, the she-wolf they called Negalota bore an unusual cub. The others grew into fine, well-made wolves, handsome to look at, capable hunters, tireless providers. Speak to them of pity, and they would not even understand the word. But Liam never seemed to grow out of his cubhood. Summer passed, autumn had nearly reached its middle, and still he had hardly hunted at all. His kin boasted of their trophies, while the little wolf, at the mere mention of blood, would bolt who knows where. He would hide in the thickest tangle and not show himself for hours on end. Sometimes his parents would decide to take him along on a hunt, but when the moment came, he would be gone. They searched with all their tricks, peering into every hiding place, yet could not find him. And if they did catch him, it brought them little joy. Liam would dig in his heels or melt his mother's heart with tears. His father had tried sternness, even punishment, but nothing seemed to reach the boy. At last, Liam declared outright, "Do with me as you will, but I will not be a killer." He did not refuse meat, true enough. He devoured it so eagerly it seemed to crack behind his ears. He would eat his fill with gusto, and yet refused even to hear where the prey came from. His parents struggled, tried every trick they knew, and in the end gave up, waving a paw at him in defeat. They withdrew. What else could they do with such a wolf? Surely he would come to ruin, and before their kin, it was a shame. One day, their neighbor, a she-wolf named Gillicoste, came to Negalota and began to sneer. "You've let your Liam snip through your paws, my dear, you have," she cackled spitefully. "Other pups are like proper pups. They dream of serious things. Take mine, for instance. They're already eyeing elk, ready for deer, too. Their father takes them hunting every day. Sometimes they even manage on their own. And what skill has yours?" Negalota bristled at that. "Don't you touch my Liam. A wolf's nature will have its due. Just you wait. Perhaps he's only gathering strength." "Oh, I saw him just the other day." Gillicoste shook with thin, biting laughter. "Lying in a meadow, listening to birds. Oh, I can't. Tell that to anyone, and they'll split their sides laughing." Negalota could not restrain herself. She chased the neighbor off, shouting insults after her. Yet afterward, she fell into deep thought. In October, Negalota's father, old Talgot, was widowed. He and his mate had gone hunting together, hoping to take a deer, but she misjudged her leap and struck a sharp hoof. Worse still, she fell badly and smashed her head against a boulder. Death, of course. The deer escaped, and Talgot dragged his mate aside, laid her on soft ground, and searched for any sign of life, but there was none. She lay utterly still, her tongue hanging from her jaws, and where could life remain when her belly had been torn open and her entrails spilled out? The old wolf grieved, of course. He mourned and wept, but what could he do? Such is a wolf's lot. Not every morsel may be taken without danger. In his day, Talgot had been renowned. He struck fear throughout the forest, fierce and terrible. Few could match him in the hunter's craft. But now his strength had faded. He had grown frail, his sight dimmed, his hearing dulled. In his mouth there were scarcely any teeth left, and those that remained were brittle. Soon he might have nothing to chew with at all. So Liam's parents decided to send their wayward son to live with his grandfather. After all, Talgot was no longer a provider. He needed someone to bring him food. And Liam, it seemed, had nowhere else to go. "Well, well," his father bared his teeth. "Let him sit hungry for a while. He'll run to the hunt soon enough. We'll see what kind of special wolf he is. Not of this world, eh?" Negalota agreed. "My father's grip is strong. He'll knock that foolishness out of him soon enough." So Liam went to live with his grandfather. Talgot immediately tried to teach him the ways of a wolf.
He dreamed, you see, of having a provider in his old age. Ah, simple soul. Liam seemed to listen, even to learn his lessons, but when it came time to hunt and test his skill, the young wolf had only one refrain. "I feel sorry for them, grandfather. They're alive," and tears would follow. Talgat would shout at him, sometimes even cuff him with a paw, but he could not bring himself to punish him harshly. Liam might have foolishness in his head, but the old wolf had come to love him. With a sigh, Talgat set off alone on the hunt. Rarely did he catch anything. When he did, he dragged it back to the den and fed his grandson. But more often, they spent their days together in hunger. Then Talgat tried a different approach. One day he returned with an empty belly and said, "You pity the beasts, but you do not understand what good work we serve." Liam saw at once that his grandfather had brought no food and waved him off irritably. "What kind of good is that, if you take their lives?" Talgat replied, "We take only the meat. Their Jivika is born again afterward." The young wolf pricked up his ears at once and looked at him with interest. Encouraged, Talgat went on, "That is the law, my grandson. It would be dull to live forever in a single body. There are many reasons, oh, so many, for death to come. Sometimes the Jivika itself gives us a sign. You run up to a herd of deer and see that in one of them the Jivika is not sitting inside but circling nearby. Then it is clear. Either the deer is ill or its Jivika no longer wishes to remain in that vessel. Why so? We do not know. Perhaps it has been called elsewhere. That is not for our understanding. What matters is that we do not fail in our purpose. Once the Jivika gives the sign, there we are. We must hurry. There is no time for delay."
Liam hesitated, but still asked, "And without us, could it not be done?" "If we were gone, there would be disease, and to die of sickness is a far worse torment. We free the Jivika quickly. In some lands there are too few wolves, and the Jivika waits and waits until it loses all hope and calls illness upon itself. Sometimes you find a deer lying lifeless. You open its belly, and there it is. It has eaten poisonous grass. That was its Jivika, no doubt, arranging it all. Gave it a bad notion, and what understanding has a deer?" "Grandfather, and if the Jivika gives no sign, if they all want to live, what then?" "They only pretend. You must look, young or old, a mother with a cub." Talgat drifted into thought, scratching behind his ear with a hind paw, then went on. "And what kind of life is theirs? To chew grass. There's no savor in it at all. I think, grandson, they simply do not know that life is endless. They are not given to see the Jivika. They are blind to it. That is why they resist. If they knew, they would come running to us themselves."
Liam grew curious about this Jivika and began to question his grandfather, what it was like and how one might draw it out. "You can always see it when it leaves the creature," Talgat told him. "You seize the throat and wait, and wait. Sometimes it bursts out so bright it dazzles the eyes. That is the moment you may loosen your jaws. The work is done. The Jivika apart, the meat apart. Such is the gift granted to us wolves. Yes, you feel a certain pride, of course. Ours is no easy calling, but it is a necessary one. Without us, nothing would hold. If we did not see that we serve a good purpose, would we feed on flesh at all?" From his earliest days, Liam's mother had frightened him with tales of humans. Wolves, she said, had no enemies in the forest but them. No beast was more terrible than the two-legged one. The enmity between them was as old as time and would never end. "Woe betide you if you cross a human," Negoloda had taught him. They carry a strange stick that strikes like lightning. If a two-leg sends that lightning into you, then you are as good as gone. Your only hope is that they miss."
Once she had brought back from the village a scrap of cloth smelling of humans. "Do not trust your eyes and ears too much," she warned. "Humans are cunning. Sometimes you do not see them at all, and then, bang, they hurl lightning from a great distance. Here, do you smell it? If ever you catch that scent, run with all your might." Remembering this, Liam asked his grandfather, "And what about humans? Do they have a Jivika too?" "Humans?" Talgot nearly leapt to his feet. "What are you saying, grandson? How could they have one? They have no purpose at all. Nothing but harm comes from them. Unclean force, that's what they are. If they had a Jivika, we would know it. I've lived long and never heard such a thing. Those who have seen their deaths all say the same. There is no human Jivika. I once saw it myself. A two-leg froze to death in the bitter cold. What brought him into the forest I cannot say, but he was no hunter, no weapon, and his clothing was light. He fell near a fir tree, and we hid nearby. I watched and watched, waiting for his Jivika to leap free of the body. I waited an hour, then 2, but nothing came. I thought to myself, perhaps I missed it, blinked at the wrong moment, and it slipped away. Some Jivikas are quick, after all. Some flee gladly and swiftly. Perhaps this one flashed past, and I did not notice. I asked the others, but they had not seen it either. We wondered the same, they said. We watched till our eyes ached. And the law of the wolves is strict. Until the Jivika has left, you must not tear the flesh. There is danger, you see. You might swallow it by accident, and who knows what it contains, poison or some terrible substance. That time, I remember, we waited till morning, and all for nothing. I went up to him, and he was frozen stiff, covered in snow, frost clinging to his face. It angered me. What foulness, I thought. I turned away and called my wolves. So we left empty-handed, having wasted our time. The crows came after us, but what do they care? Their bellies are lined with iron. Nothing is sacred to them. Liam listened, and then said quietly, "Now I understand, grandfather, why humans hate us. We have the Jivika, and they do not."
"Perhaps that is part of it, and they do not like it that we take their meat. They come into the forest for it themselves, and we are in their way. They think themselves masters of our lands, as though everything here were made for them." So they talked the whole day through. Talgat rejoiced inwardly. He thought he had brought his grandson to reason, and that it was time to prepare him for the hunt. But nothing came of it. The old wolf had to go out once more on his own. Near the tract called Wolf's Ribs, where Liam and his family had come from, stood the village of Moroshino. Not long ago, a new family had settled there, the agronomist Oleg Kashunkov with his young wife. He was not from these parts. Only the year before he had finished his higher studies, and then he was sent, together with his bride, to take charge of the neglected village. The salary was modest, but they were given a house, no empty shell either, but furnished well enough to begin a life. Oleg spent his days in the fields and at the farm, while Valya, his wife, tended to their little daughter, Anyutka, and kept the household running. That first summer she set the garden in order, planted vegetables and greens. Their livestock was meager. They had bought only a goat. But this year they added a dozen laying hens, a rooster, and 5 geese. It was with those geese that the trouble began. In summer, one of the geese injured her leg, and Valya brought the poor creature into the house. What a trial it was for them all. The goose would not eat,
cried constantly, and the others circled the house, refusing food as well, honking and calling plaintively, searching for their sister. They lingered by the door, crowded beneath the windows. Several times a day, Valya would carry the injured goose outside to show her to them. The geese would look at one another, and only then would they settle. Their voices changed, too, lighter, almost cheerful, each calling in turn as if speaking of its own affairs. But as soon as Valya carried the goose back inside, it all began again. So it went on until the wound had healed. Geese are always like that. They live as a close-knit family, bound tightly to one another, unable to bear separation. And when a pair forms, they are faithful. Though in a household it is arranged that one gander may have 2, 3, or even more mates, still there is always one he loves above the rest.
And this is no accident. Birds whose plumage is alike are called inseparable. Look at swans, for instance. No matter how closely you study them, you cannot tell the male from the female by their feathers. They wear the same attire. Only by other signs can you guess. The male a little larger, his neck stronger. You might think, what of it, that they look the same? But there is a hidden law of nature here. Those birds that share the same plumage are the faithful ones. It is no wonder people speak of swan fidelity. And not only swans, many birds share this mystery. Ravens, too, the male and the female are alike in their black feathers, and they do not part until death. Not all birds are bound so deeply. Chickens are quite another matter. The rooster struts in bright colors and demands many hens, 10 or more. He casts his eye on chujie hens as well, and if one disappears from the coop, he scarcely remembers her. He may notice the loss, of course, but his heart will not ache. The hens are no different. Replace one rooster with another, and they hardly seem to notice the change. But geese are the truest of all inseparables. To live without their family is torment to them. They cling to one another.
Little Anyutka grew very attached to the injured goose. She was not yet 3 years old, yet she abandoned all her toys, and at the slightest chance would call, "Goosey, Goosey." She played with her every day. When the goose's leg healed, they let her return to her family. The geese grazed on the grass, and Anyutka stayed beside her goosey, crawling near her, hugging her soft neck. The geese did not chase her away. Sometimes they nipped her gently, like a tickle, murmuring in their own way. In November, when the hard frost set in, people in the village began slaughtering their poultry. But Valya was not used to village life. She felt sorry for the geese. She went to her neighbor, old Alyona, to ask for advice. "I told you," the old woman said, "don't get mixed up with geese. You should have taken broilers instead. Same 5 kilos of meat, and easier on the soul. Geese are good creatures. Chickens are different. They'll peck each other to death. I lost 2 that way over the summer. If one falls behind in growth, they show no mercy. And how many more I had to save." Valya waited for her husband to come home from work and said, "Let's keep the geese, Oleg. I feel sorry for them. Let them live," she pleaded, looking at him with quiet desperation. Oleg did not like the idea. "We don't even have a warm shed," he brushed her off. "What next? Bring them into the house? Let them sleep on the rug by our bed?" Valya sighed, then added, her voice trembling, "And Anyutka, she's grown attached to the goose. She plays with her." Oleg himself could not imagine how to explain to his daughter where her goosey had gone. He even grew irritated and snapped, "What kind of pastime is that? She'll forget." But then he thought it over, and at last agreed to spare just that one goose, the one Anyutka played with. So her life was saved. Only it turned out for the worse. For it is well known, sometimes a kindness can turn into harm. As soon as the goose was left alone,
She seemed to lose her mind. From morning till night she cried, flinging herself against the walls until she bled and would not even go near food. When Valia let her out of the pen, she would rush about the yard, peer into the chicken coop, and call, as if she were weeping. Of the 5, she had once been the neatest. Whenever you looked at her, she was always preening, smoothing, and cleaning her feathers. From dawn till dusk she fussed over herself. She could not bear dirty feet. Let them get soiled even a little, and she would run straight to the wash-basin, splashing her russet-webbed feet in the water, paddling and chattering happily, like a foolish girl, stealing glances at the gander. And now she ran through the muddy slush, slapped her feet into black puddles as if she noticed nothing at all. The bright orange had vanished from her legs, and her white feathers were smeared with soot-black grime. It was a snowy autumn day. Since morning, a blizzard had played across the land, whitening everything, laying a soft cover of snow, and by evening it suddenly fell still, not a twig stirring. As usual, Liam dozed in his hiding place beneath the fir branches, and he dreamed. He was swimming across a river, making his way from one bank to the other. Suddenly, 4 geese splashed down into the water beside him, surrounded him on all sides, and began to beg him for something. They cried out anxiously, interrupting one another, beating their wings, and one goose, a snow-white one, without a single dark speck, was weeping outright. Liam could scarcely make sense of it. The geese would not let him pass, yet he felt no fear at all. At last the web-footed ones quieted a little, and the eldest gander spoke. "Our sister is left with the humans. They will not let her go, and we cannot be without her." "And she suffers now, and so do we," sobbed the white goose. The others began clamoring again, until the elder hissed them into silence, then explained. "Liam must go to the village and devour a certain goose. You will be fed, and our sister will be free," concluded the gander. The moment Liam understood they were asking him to take a life, he snarled, tore himself free, and swam for the shore. The geese did not fall behind. They shamed him, then even began to threaten him. The young wolf reached the bank and woke at once. He marveled at the strangeness of the dream. "I must tell grandfather," he thought. But then he lay listening to the hazel grouse calling in the trees and forgot all about it. Why the geese had chosen Liam, this was a mystery. Perhaps nature itself had sensed its mistake, that a wolf ought not stray from his nature, and had decided to set the wayward cub right. Or perhaps there was some other reason. Who could say? When Liam fell asleep again, the geese came to him once more. This time he ran straight to his grandfather and told him everything. "They are in a hurry to be born again," said Talgat. Liam did not understand. "But where could they be born now, grandfather? It's winter."
"It is winter here," Talgat replied. "But elsewhere, perhaps it is summer." He paused, looking thoughtfully at his grandson. "This is how I see it, Liam. I have heard that the earth is made in such a way that when it is summer in one half, it is winter in the other. Here we are in late autumn, but on the far side spring may be warming the ground, melting the snow. Here all birds have already raised their young, but in those lands some goose may just now be sitting on her eggs. Perhaps these very geese will be born there. Or perhaps they are hastening somewhere else, or waiting out the winter. We do not know. They also say there are other worlds besides ours. Who can tell? Live long enough, grandson, and you will see how many mysteries there are in life. Oh, so many. Anything is possible." Liam was astonished. The world, it seemed, was far stranger than he had ever imagined. Then he asked, "Grandfather,
Why did they come to me? Well now, the old wolf's eyes flickered with a sly light. Because you are the finest hunter in the forest. Liam looked almost hurt and muttered plaintively, You're mocking me, grandfather, but I still won't go to that goose. I am no killer.
At once Talgot grew stern. He turned away and shuffled back to his resting place. Then he suddenly looked over his shoulder and said, I will tell you this, if they were wild geese, I would drive you there myself. But to go into the village, that is no good. You would perish there and bring ruin on the whole pack. For Liam, that was exactly what he wanted to hear. Everything fell in line with his thoughts. Only the geese would not leave him in peace. They began to visit him in every dream, by night, and even if he dozed during the day. They wept, begged, shamed him, and each time the white ghost would say, What kind of wolf are you? You're no wolf, you're a gopher. Once they came to him as if not in a dream at all. Right there, beneath the little fir where he had fallen asleep, they surrounded him again, crying out on all sides, beating their wings. They drove the poor wolf nearly mad. He dared not even think of sleep any more. By day he stayed awake, and at night he waited in dread.
And yet, as the saying goes, even water wears down stone. They wore him down. At last it became unbearable, and one morning he was ready to dash off to the village. Talgot barely managed to stop him. Don't rush headlong, Liam, the old wolf grumbled. In such matters you need a plan. In your haste you'll only catch a human bullet. But he refused outright to help his grandson. Before going to the village, he advised him to say farewell to his kin. You've set your mind on a serious deed, and you have no skill for it, Talgot said, looking at him as though they were parting forever. You would not listen to your grandfather, now deal with it as you will. I am no helper to you. At least let your mother see you once more. Liam went to his parents' den and told his mother of his plan. She flung up her paws at once. Don't you even think of it, she cried, her voice rising to a shriek. You stealing prey from humans? Step into that village and hunters will come running from all around. I won't let you go. His father, Slouchtail, was nearby. He frowned at once and shook his head. In his youth, you see, he had often ventured into the village. In his foolishness, he thought there was plenty of food there for him, and he would go, of course, snatch a piglet, carry off a chicken or two. For a time he got away with it, until he ran into a human bullet. By sheer luck, the hunter missed. The wolf escaped by a miracle, barely saving his hide. Still, the shot struck the tip of his tail, near the root. Negalota had gnawed the bullet out with her teeth, but something had been damaged, and ever since his tail hung limp and lifeless. That was how he earned his name. After that, he swore never to go near the village again. He would not come close. The lesson had lasted him a lifetime. So when he heard that Liam meant to go there, he turned on him sharply. Do you want to destroy us? He barked. You must not provoke humans. In Chugia lands, perhaps, and even then only in the direst hunger, when there is nothing to put in your belly. And he began to tell how humans wage war on wolves, how they send hunters into the forest, hang red flags on the branches, set cunning traps.
Humans, he said, guard what is theirs fiercely, and if harm comes to their livestock, they raise such an outcry as no wolf could match. That is why among wolves there is an understanding: never hunt in your own village. It costs too dearly. Every pack knows this law. Better to travel 100 miles and find something in Chujaya village, so long as you do not cross another pack's territory.
Those too are not fools. They guard their lands just as strictly. So keep your ears sharp." In the end, his parents filled him with fear. They forbade their wayward son to show his nose in the village, and made him swear a solemn oath to forget the road there altogether. And Liam himself grew frightened. He thought it over and gave in. He obeyed his parents, deciding that his kin were dearer to him than any geese. After all, they came only in dreams, and what trust could one place in dreams? He had made up his mind, but that very night he saw a dream stranger than any before.
This time only one goose came to him. The 4 others he already knew in every detail, but this one was different, unfamiliar. She came up to him and suddenly turned into a she-wolf, a beauty beyond words, so beautiful he could hardly look away. Her coat was pale, her nose slightly arched, and her eyes so large they scarcely seemed to fit upon her face. The she-wolf looked at Liam with tenderness and just a hint of reproach. "So I have come myself. Are you satisfied now?" Liam understood nothing, but she grew sharper. "If you go on sleeping your days away like this, we will never meet," she said, and began to explain. She was his destined mate. A mistake had been made, she said. Cruel fate had scattered them into different families, placed them into different bodies. "They tore us apart," the she-wolf wept, "and now, when at last we might be together, you refuse even to know me." Liam sprang to his feet. "Refuse? I would do anything for you." "Then why will you not set me free?" she asked, looking at him with quiet reproach, and burst into tears. "What do you mean I won't?" he asked, bewildered. "What did my brothers and sisters tell you?" "What brothers? Sisters? Have you forgotten? The goslings." And then it came to him, but the moment he tried to speak, he woke. The young wolf marveled at such a dream. How strange, how true it had felt. And he rejoiced, too, that such a beauty was meant to be his bride. For though he lacked something of a wolf's nature, he was still of an age, and his gaze had begun to linger on young she-wolves. He did not dream long. He forgot all caution, forgot even the oath he had sworn, and at once ran toward Moroshino. He found the right yard quickly enough. As soon as the first rooftops appeared, he knew where his future mate was suffering. Her cries carried far. Though she had grown hoarse, and to human ears it might not have seemed loud, Liam heard her from afar. "Monsters," he thought, almost in tears. "Grandfather was right. These humans are the foulest of all creatures." And he ran faster still. He forgot all caution, rushing forward, each cry of the goose echoing in his heart. Only when he reached the edge of the forest did he remember his grandfather's words. "In the village, be most careful. Stalk without haste, or you'll have every dog on you." So he crept on more carefully. The Koshenkov's dog was a foolish creature. It neither heard nor scented Liam until the very last moment. Only when the wolf had already leapt the fence and landed nearby did it burst into a hoarse bark. Then, seized with terror, it fled straight into its kennel, pressed itself into the far corner, and lay there, barely alive with fear. That suited Liam perfectly. He listened. Silence in the house. No light in the windows. The goose, as if by miracle, had fallen quiet. Only the hens in the coop stirred, clucking in alarm, then fell silent again. The rooster alone muttered irritably to himself. Liam waited a little longer, then crept toward the goose pen. He saw that the door was not locked, only a wooden latch held it shut. He jumped, struck the latch loose, and the door shifted open. With a push of his paw,
he slipped inside. At that very instant, the goose let out a piercing cry and flung herself into the far corner. She was terrified beyond words, beating her wings, thrashing, crying out as if in desperate sobbing, calling for help. Liam himself felt fear rise in him, but he did not hesitate. Though no hunter, the wolf's blood took hold. He sprang forward, pinned the goose beneath his paws, and in a single motion closed his jaws upon her white neck. At that moment, Liam saw it, the Javika leaving the body. A bright little spark flared, then darted away, slipping through the wall of the shed and vanishing. A shudder passed through the bird's body, and the goose fell still. Liam opened his jaws and froze in horror at what he had done.
He stared at the lifeless goose. She lay there so pitifully, her wings pressed awkwardly to her breast, and in her bead-like eyes it seemed as though tears had been left behind. And Liam began to cry. He forgot everything his grandfather had taught him. "Once you finish the kill," the old wolf had said, "run from there as fast as you can." But Liam wept without restraint, and then began to howl, mournfully, helplessly. In the Kashumkov's house they woke at once. More than that, the neighbors were roused as well. Oleg had barely had time to dress when their neighbor, Matvey Brajnikov, came running with a rifle. And Liam, streaming with tears, gnawed at the fragile bones, choking as he swallowed bloody chunks of meat crunching through white feathers. He devoured the whole goose without even noticing when the people drew near.
Oleg and Matvey were astonished. It was a strange sight indeed. Who had ever heard of a wolf forgetting himself in a shed and singing his grief aloud? At first they thought to lock the singer inside until morning, but he had already frightened the whole neighborhood. Before he had only whimpered, but now, seeing that nothing remained of the goose but scraps of feathers, Liam broke down completely and howled at the top of his voice. Matvey was a skilled hunter, a sure shot, and the night was bright. He said, "You scare him out of the shed, I won't miss." But first they decided to see what kind of wolf it was. They shone a flashlight through a crack and saw that he was very young. They decided to take him alive. Matvey brought a nylon net woven from thick cord. They fashioned something like a great scoop net and began to drive the young wolf into it. He yelped, bared his teeth, but darted away from the net with surprising agility. At one moment he slipped between Oleg's legs, burst from the shed, and fled. He had already reached the edge of the woods when Matvey raised his rifle, took aim at chance, and pulled the trigger. At the shot, the young wolf flipped head over heels, let out a piercing cry, and fell onto his side. He struggled up at once, leapt, his back arching, and collapsed into the snow again. He crawled, his whole body trembling. Then Matvey finished him with a second shot. They came up to him. He was still alive. His breath came in convulsions. A faint light still flickered in his eyes. One foreleg lay twisted awkwardly, trembling. There was something so helpless, so childlike about him, as if he were not a wolf at all, but a foolish little pup. The young wolf turned his bloodied muzzle toward them and looked, without understanding, without anger, without reproach. Oleg and Matvey faltered. A moment before they had rejoiced in the successful shot, and now their hearts sank, as if something bitter had settled inside them, as if they had done something against their own souls. They stood there not knowing what to do. The young wolf scraped weakly at the blood-stained snow, lowered his head, and was still. The night was clear and full of stars. The moon hung in the middle of the sky, round and whole, like a ruddy loaf. All around was bright. Suddenly, the honking of geese was heard, and against the pale disk of the moon, a wedge of geese appeared in flight. Not quite even, At the back of one side, 2 geese flew close together. "Look, look, late flyers," Matvei cried. "Would you believe it? Must be a late brood. How many are there?" "1, 2, 6."